I probably don't know any of this stuff well enough to say it simply and make it understood. I have no clue, but maybe this helps, maybe it doesn't. What's going on? My name is Liam. Today I'm going to be talking about creative energy and where does it go? If you do anything creative, whether you write a book, make some sort of video, have to draw something, whatever it is, creative energy is very particular and it only seems to come when we have nothing going on. So for me, I'm in college, and when I do schoolwork, which I always front load at the beginning of the day, when I do it, it seems that I'm tapped out creatively for the most part. So here's what my typical weekday looks like. I wake up, go to the gym, and come back, drink coffee. And in this state, I feel like I can handle my toughest task for the day. Now, in this video, I'm going to be throwing some neuroscience in here that I've just learned, so hopefully I don't get too nerdy, but just beware. In the morning, your cortisol is spiked, as well as your dopamine. So these things make it so whatever your toughest task is going to be easiest in the morning. Whether that's creative or executive, logical type stuff like schoolwork. So just my nature, I like to do the thing that is obligatory, that I don't want to do first. And that leaves my creative work, which I'm writing a book and I make YouTube videos, for the second half of the day. And I haven't really liked how this has panned out, and I've wondered why. So one of the things at play here is when you do something that is obligatory, like schoolwork, and requires logical focus, you're using the brain's task positive network, or TPN. And this is for those logical, goal-oriented tasks. The problem is, though, that this area of the brain suppresses the creative parts of the brain. It's kind of like you have one or the other. The other part of the brain we call the default mode network. This is responsible for when you are reflecting, daydreaming, or just simply being. Now, I've done a lot of research on the effects of psychedelics on the brain. And one of the things about a psychedelic is that it lowers the activity of the default mode network. And one of the reasons that's good, especially in the context of mental health, is rumination seems to fade. You seem to think less about yourself. For someone who's depressed, for example, that is great. But a lot of these creative ideas are coming from the default mode network, where you're reflecting and distal, far areas of your brain are allowed to connect because it's allowed to wander. So random things start to make sense when the default mode network is on. Now in my week, Friday and Saturday, I pretty much have nothing going on, and I structure it that way intentionally because that's when the heavy lifting of my creative work gets done. I write the most for my book. I always make a cool-ass YouTube video, and it seems to work that way. On those days when you have a completely empty schedule, your cortisol and norepinephrine drop. So cortisol, stress hormone, it's good for work. It galvanizes you to want to do something. And norepinephrine is great for logical tasks. It's a focus chemical. Both of these drop when you have nothing going on. So this allows the quieter, more creative signals to be received. So your mind ends up entering this kind of leisurely, explorative state where you're not afraid of wasting bad ideas or wasting energy on bad ideas. When I have schoolwork I gotta do, which is something I really don't want to do, it's easiest in the morning because I'm running off of this premium fuel, the cortisol and the dopamine that is just pumping through. But the only way to get to the good ideas is to move through the bad ones, but that requires energy. We're all familiar with when we're in the shower or maybe sometimes on a walk with no stimulus. This is when our best ideas come to our brain. And that's because whether you're showering or just walking down the street, that executive part of your brain is busied by the physical act of doing it or the physical act of washing your hair. And that allows the default mode network to run without having a bunch of time in between. So the real problem I've experienced is that I front load my day with my toughest work, and I've effectively used my premium fuel for the day. And then I'm left with, well, I got what I absolutely had to get done, but then I don't have any energy to do the creative work. And then you have another task, or another force at play. If you're unfamiliar with how the human biology works, your energy levels rise and then fall in accordance to the sun and its position in the sky. We are circadian optimized beings where we're meant to be sleeping at night, we're meant to be awake during the day, and at about 3 p.m. your body heavily switches to prepare for night. And so midday I start to feel this sleep pressure due to a chemical called adenosine, which begins releasing in the morning and then just stacks up as the day goes on. So by afternoon, which is when I primarily try to write for my book, the adenosine is high enough to hinder the firing of neurons in the prefrontal cortex, which is where all of these focus processes take place, or that area of the brain is responsible. Now, there is a supposed optimal amount of arousal in your brain to actually perform a task like writing a book. So for context, every day I do the same thing. I eat lunch around noon to 2 p.m. And then after lunch directly, I go for a walk, which is anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes. And then I come home and do nothing, which is also known as meditation, for 30 minutes. And after doing this for about 2 months, essentially since I started writing the book, I've found that although it's incredibly peaceful, I feel super relaxed. It's probably great for my body. It doesn't get me to the creative headspace, which is what I really want and really need. I'm trying to achieve creativity on a day-to-day basis, not just stacked in 1 or 2 days of the week. But there's a balance. If you're too stressed and heavily pumping with cortisol in the morning, that creative channel is blocked. And if you're too peaceful, like I often get after the meditation, you have no focus left for the creative activity. So what I'm gonna try from now on is after the meditation, I'm gonna do something to try and reactivate my body. So just consulting AI, I was talking about dumping all my ideas on paper so that it shifts my brain from a consumer-based mindset to a producer-based mindset for, 5 minutes. So I could see myself drawing. The second way is trying to get an adrenaline release, so do push-ups, jumping jacks, etc. to physically release adrenaline. And then the last one it recommended was binaural beats to hopefully stimulate some beta brainwave activity, which is great for concentration and problem solving. So I realized this video was not really helpful. So I don't know. I mostly just filmed this for myself so that it helps me, but shit, I'd be a baby if I didn't post this, just because there's probably some good information in there. I probably don't know any of the stuff well enough to say it simply and make it understood. I have no clue, but maybe this helps, maybe it doesn't. Hopefully it does. It helped me, so peace out.